Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:06 now on this Friday edition of O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here, especially on this Memorial Day weekend, as we're already seeing traffic problems.
Yeah.
With half of 95 locked up there for people getting out of town. That's all right. We're going to get you through it all and keep you informed and entertained on the day's events. Thanks for joining us. Coming up at 8:05, Kash Patel is going to talk about Trump in the Bronx yesterday. Quite a scene. 8:15, Mike Litterist. He's with the National Mall and Memorial Parks National Park Service. Talk about everything that you want to do this Memorial Day downtown. And then at 8:35, the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. I'm Larry O'Connor with the effervescent, proud, and distinguished Patrice Onwuka.
Well, thank you, Larry, and happy Friday to everyone.
Happy Friday.
Today.
Onwuka. Yes. I just love pronouncing your name. Onwuka. So when the colonies, the American colonies, embarked upon the unthinkable, impossible task of freeing itself from the British crown, George Washington knew that we needed a standing navy. And so he began that process with a group of ships that were known as Washington's cruisers. This was 1775. We did not have a flag, let alone a nation at that time. So he created a flag. It's known as the Appeal to Heaven flag or the Washington Cruisers flag. It has a pine tree on it with a white background, the words an appeal to heaven. And now apparently it is a symbol of hate. Justice Samuel Alito has had this flag flying recently outside of his home. We're told that it was his wife's decision to do that. And now the demands are out to have Samuel Alito recuse himself from any case involving anything that might, I guess, involve freedom. I maybe Mark Paoletta can explain this a little better. He's not of the left, but he understands their dementia. He's the senior fellow at Center for Renewing America. And Mark, I mean, one can easily fall into the trap of having to explain the historic significance and beauty of this flag. But actually, that's not really the point here, is it? This is just a totalitarian tactic.
Larry and Patrice, thanks for having me on. Exactly right. And I heard you at the 6 o'clock hour, Larry, fired up on this. It is just despicable what the left does to destroy our symbols. You know, I fly a U.S. flag every day outside my house. Sometimes I've flown a Marine flag. My son was in the Marines. But I just ordered, in light of this story, the Appeal to Heaven flag. And,
yeah. Actually, we neglected to say this, Patrice, because you love the free market and capitalism. If one thing this story has achieved, it's you can't get this flag anywhere now. They're all on back order.
That's great.
You know what? I went on Amazon. I was worried actually when you know that it was going to be sold out, but I ordered to come in today. So. This is one of these crazy stories. It's a despicable story, and it really captures the left, right? And we'll get to in a second the attacks on the court. But look at the intolerance and ugliness of the left. How did this all come to light, right? Martha Ann Alito notices a flag, right, in her neighborhood with an F Trump sign on it in view of a bus stop, right, with kids, and she says something to the person.
Hold on, was that Sotomayor's house, or are they not neighbors? I'm just curious. Sorry, go ahead. But she then gets called an awful thing by this neighbor. This is the tolerant left, right? This is the professional class of D.C. left that says ugly, uncivil things to people, and you know, and reporting all this, right? The New York Times hasn't said who is this neighbor, right, or what is going on here as to in terms of these attacks in the neighborhood. But the larger issue is, Larry, as you said, this is an attack on the Supreme Court, and what we're seeing now over the past few years is what happens is, again, the left no longer controls the Supreme Court. That's really important to understand. President Trump appointed 3 justices that have really taken the court in a direction, a constitutional direction, which it hasn't been for probably 70 years. Right? No matter a Republican or Democrat president, they were always liberal justices. And so what's happening now is when the left realized, wow, this is real, right? And Dobbs came down, right? You saw like Schumer threatening Kavanaugh
and Gorsuch in 2020, and then it ramps up. So every springtime, here's what's going to happen. Every springtime, there's going to be some insane story about ethics or or the appeal to heaven flag that's trying to delegitimize the Supreme Court. In 2022, right, it was Dobbs' case. In 2023, the attacks on Justice Thomas with this ridiculous ProPublica story, right? What was on the dock? The affirmative action case, right? Those are the two pillars of the left, right? Race-based, dividing up in. I was listening to your story earlier about UCLA. It's race-based, attacks to divide our country, and then the abortion case in 2022. That's and now, what is it? It's the Trump cases, right? Presidential immunity. The whole ball of wax to keep President Trump off the ballot. So this is what the left does. It shows this ugliness of them, their intolerance, their viciousness. And what happens, though, with this story, I think, is it's just like the Kavanaugh, right? When they had Christine Blasey Ford, who was not credible, right? But then what did they bring in next? Julie Swetnick and Michael Avenatti, right? Lunatics that the American people saw were like, this was not anything about facts or the issue. This was about just smearing people with even unhinged stories. That's what this Alito story is. I stand with Sam Alito. I stand with Martha Ann Alito. I know them. They're great people. They're great patriots. You're getting attacked in your neighborhood. What's a good way to show that you're distressed, or upset? The American flag flying upside down. Perfectly
Mark,
fine.
I think you're right to be upset, and thank you that you shared with us your personal connection to them, because you know them, and you know that this is not based on what the New York Times article would suggest, to people who have January 6th riot leanings, but that these are just American patriots, and one happens to be sitting on the Supreme Court. What I'm curious about, though, is now we see House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries joining with a bunch of Democratic colleagues, sending a letter asking Alito, or calling on Alito, to recuse himself from some upcoming January 6th related cases. Does that even make sense? Are they just kind of trying to throw a bomb out there to maybe, to your point, try to taint any of the Supreme Court's decisions and Alito's vote in those decisions by trying to paint him as some sort of J6 sympathizer in advance? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, Patrice, that's exactly what it's about, and it's amazing that they want to shrink the court by trying to force justices to recuse off of on bogus issues, right? Then they want to weaken the American people's belief in the Supreme Court. Now, I will tell you, the latest poll, this is not working. The latest poll that just came out showed a 52% favorable rating, very favorable rating of the Supreme Court, which is much higher than the Congress, much higher than the media. So the American people are smart. We need to. I'm so glad you're talking about this issue to push back on it, and show how absurd and vicious it is, and why it is a political strategy to undermine the Supreme Court. What's funny, right, is that the Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, Sheldon Whitehouse, take your pick of the members of Congress up there, they are not subject to any conflict of interest laws up there. They're the only branch of government that exempts themselves, so that you have Sheldon Whitehouse helping his wife out on with her companies and passing legislation or introducing legislation to help him. But again, I think it's also, you see Hank Johnson, a member of Congress from Georgia, setting up an organization or working with an organization to pack the court. Specifically, he's calling on 13 justices to add, because they don't like an independent Supreme Court. What they want is a Supreme Court that does their bidding, that does their work on things they can't pass. And so these are all vicious, bogus attacks on the court. They're going to happen. I think it's going to happen every spring now. But we need to push back on them and expose why they don't make sense, what is happening with the court.
Mark Paoletta, Senior Fellow at the Center for Renewing America. And if Samuel Alito is anything like, if Justice Alito is anything like Justice Thomas, this is not going to work. If anything, it's going to make him even firmer in his beliefs and his stands and his integrity. So it's all a waste of time.
I'll close out with one other thing, which is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? She literally attacked Donald Trump during the 2016 campaign, in the middle of the campaign, to thwart him from being president. The most unethical act in recent Supreme Court history. And how did the New York Times cover it? Oh, she's outspoken, and how refreshing that she doesn't keep her political opinions to herself.
Right.
That's literally how
it's
they
refreshing.
cover. Right. It was refreshing. I put up this post on at Mark on X where I took a picture of Adam Liptak from the New York Times saying most justices don't talk about politics. Ruth Ginsburg follows a different path. And she doesn't like a certain presidential candidate. That is how he covered the most unethical act in Supreme. And she never recused from a single Trump case, Trump administration case, including, if you recall, when she attacked him in 2016, that he wasn't releasing his taxes. She sat on a case in 2020, Trump v. Mazar. What was that on? Whether Trump had to release his taxes. Did a single left-wing judicial person say she shouldn't be sitting on something she's already said he should be doing? No. So that's the gaslighting. That's the double standards. That's the game that the left plays. They don't care about ethics. They care about power. Okay, that's what this is about, power.
Thank you for your passion, and thank you for the work you're doing, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're defending these great men who sit on our Supreme Court. Thank you, sir. It is 7:17. Let's go to Jamie Whitten now in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Joe Biden, the President of the United States, who wants 4 more years, by the way, after this year is up at the age of 82. He had a joint press conference yesterday with the President of Kenya, and it wasn't a pretty sight here,
oh boy.
Patrice. By the way, not because of the dignity of the President of Kenya. He seems like a cool dude, and a really impressive family, and it was just kind of nice. But Biden was just an embarrassment, as usual. Here he is talking about the Nairobi, Washington vision and helping countries settle with it. And I want to reiterate, this man is reading. He's reading what's in front of him, and he can't do that.
So today we're launching what we're calling the Nairobi, Washington vision. This initiative is going to bring together international financial institutions and nations from all around the world to mobilize more resources for countries saddled with debt, to open more opportunities to the private sector financing, to promote transparent, sustainable, and affordable lending practices.
Hold on. What did he just say? We're using our national treasury and American tax dollars to help other countries who are...
To mobilize more resources for countries saddled with debt.
We're saddled with debt, Patrice.
Are you kidding me? We are saddled to what, $36 trillion of debt?
Yeah. He then goes on to... This is here.
2 years ago, our nation's first black vice president, President Kamala Harris...
Did you catch that?
2 years ago.
Our first black vice president, President Kamala Harris. He called her, but while identifying her as our first black vice president, he referred to her as President Harris. Who's
2 years ago, our nation's first black vice president, President Kamala Harris.
He's very confused.
First black vice president. Maybe he just said president twice.
Oh, there it's
in
the stutter
vice
again.
President.
Yeah.
Is it a stutter?
And also this is a great moment too in Biden history.
And the African continent have 1 billion people not too soon. The idea we're going to ignore it makes no sense at all.
What he muttered there, and you could barely hear, was the African continent will have 1 billion people soon. Actually, the African continent is already at 1.4 billion people. So soon has already passed us by, old man.
He's a little behind.
Well, and this straw man, the idea that we'd ignore Africa. Who's ignoring Africa? Actually, you know who's paying a lot of attention to Africa is China. China's all over Africa right now.
China and the Caribbean, by the way. China is willingly building infrastructure in a lot of these places so that and using their labor so that they can then have a nice foothold in those countries. The United States, if anything, is the one who's not really paying attention. But hey, that's Biden for you.
Well, listen, we're paying attention to the countries where we have a strategic interest, and that's usually how we go about things. China's just trying to bribe people all over the place. But it's this old trope that we ignore Africa because after all, America's racist. It's a made-up divisive issue. They then took questions. So the press in the room, as usual, when they do these joint press conferences, they trade back and forth between the two world leaders.
Okay, next. Do I ask the next question as well?
Let me ask, are you abdicated from Kenya for the next question?
So, again, he's confused, utterly confused, even though he's been president now in his third year, finishing up his third year. He's actually in his fourth year, excuse me. And he's not the one who asked the questions. He's the person answering questions. That's how these press conferences work. But he does so few of them. It's understandable that he didn't quite get it.
Larry, I think that's true of most press conferences. There's someone with information, and then there are the reporters to ask the information. There's and the fact that President Biden doesn't realize that, that's sad.
Finally, it was and everyone was noting it on social media. Byron York was talking about it. They talked about it on Fox News as well. John Roberts was. That his answers to the questions were almost all completely read from a card. In other words, they already knew what question was going to be asked, and he already had the answer written for him, and he read them. It was a very bizarre performance. And then at the end, more reporters wanted to ask him questions, and he acted like really scared, like startled that the reporters stood up and wanted to ask him more questions. Listen to him, and then listen to Karine Jean-Pierre just cut it all off and abruptly end the press conference.
Will you allow me to
This concludes the press conference. Thanks, everybody.
Did you hear him yell, "Whoa"? He was like,
that was him who yelled.
That was
whoa.
him.
I thought it was
all the reporters started shouting questions. Whoa! And he's like, "Whoa!" Like he was startled, like he was scared, and so then Karine Jean-Pierre jumped in to save him.
This concludes the press conference. Thanks, everybody.
There is nothing normal in this White House right now. We are facing serious issues, and this man is incapable. It's 7:24.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:36 now on O'Connor and Company on a busy Friday morning. It's Memorial Day weekend. Also today is graduation day and commissioning day at the United States Naval Academy. If you're in the area, well, you're about to hit a lot of traffic. But it's going to be a great day for all involved. Coming up at 8:05, Kash Patel on Trump Takes Manhattan. Oh, actually Bronx, technically. 8:15, Mike Litterist on this weekend's Memorial Day plans at the mall. And then at 8:35, the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. Patrice Onwuka, good to see you.
Yeah. Happy Friday.
Let's talk about Trump in the Bronx. I think the build-up to this was something. And you'll remember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was very dismissive of this whole thing and said,
I'm looking forward to the response of everyday Bronxites talking about how they feel about him coming to their backyard.
Well, and then, of course, what happened was there were all these men on the street interviews from Fox News and from Newsmax asking real-life Bronxites, what do you think about Trump coming here? And they're like, we love him. That's great. I expected, as I said yesterday, that they didn't have a giant space. They didn't book Madison Square Garden. They were in a park, and they had a limited number of seats or in the area. And I think they planned it well to say, okay, we're not going to have huge expectations, and it'll look like it's overflowing. Well, Patrice, it didn't just look like it was overflowing. It was overflowing.
Yes.
This was, I don't know what the final count was, but that had to be over 10,000 people. I saw some people say 30,000. It's so impossible to estimate crowd sizes. But let me just say, this was definitely more than anyone thought they would draw in the Bronx. It was overwhelming.
Oh, it was. I've seen an estimate of 25,000, and I believe they had reserved spots for like 3,200. So
that's right.
Obviously they blew past their expectations. Exactly. The other angle is the people who are in the crowd. I mean, I think everyone has an idea of who a traditional Trump supporter is. White, middle-aged and older. This crowd was young. This crowd, a lot of Black and Hispanics. This crowd, it spanned a lot of women. So you're seeing faces of people that you wouldn't normally associate with being the MAGA crowd. I saw a Hispanic guy with MAGA tattooed on his neck.
Yes,
I don't know if it was a real tattoo.
Oh, it was the Bronx, all right. Yeah.
But it's the color that it brings. I'm going to borrow some CNN analyst language. The color it brings to the picture depicts that of a really diverse supporter base for the Trump campaign.
You're right. You're right, Patrice. It was the last thing the media wanted to see there. And you're 100% right in terms of look, there were a lot of thoughts that, oh, well, this won't be real New Yorkers. This will be people who are coming in from rural areas in Long Island and upstate and maybe in New Jersey. No. These were definitely people from the Bronx.
Oh, it was exciting. It was the entire atmosphere was electrifying. There were people from all over the Bronx, black, white, Hispanic. There was Asians, there was Jews, there were it was just a smorgasbord of basically patriots.
Yeah, that ain't no pig farmer from rural Pennsylvania who drove up. Trust me. And listen, don't believe us. Believe these two sad sacks having to report on it. Anderson Cooper and his reporter in the field there on CNN. Listen to the tone.
What was the crowd like and what kind of response did he get?
Well, certainly a bigger crowd than I think Democrats would like to see, particularly given this is one of the bluest counties in the entire country. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me is that the Trump campaign said that they were going to micro-target to get people from the community to come to this rally. I wasn't sure what to expect. I've gone to a lot of these rallies across the country, and there are often people who travel hundreds of miles to see Donald Trump, and they're not necessarily part of the community. However, one of the things that I found was that there were a lot of people here that were actually from the Bronx.
Oh, they're so sad, Patrice.
Yes, there are people in Democratic cities who don't support Democrats and are being drawn into the Trump. I mean, this is I have said it, Larry, on TV before, and I've been laughed at. But I've said I think that there is a real political fundamental shift going on with the voter base, and particularly when you look at young people and people of color. And this is a great thing because they may not necessarily go wholesale into the Republican camp, but they are wholesale leaving the Democratic camp, and that's important.
I want you all to hear what Donald Trump had to say because his message was perfectly tailored to this crowd, and even more importantly, frankly, to the media who couldn't help but cover this. And this is a message that got sent out last night.
Look, we had the greatest economy in history. Everybody here, where you have a small business or if you had a job, you were getting more than you ever made. And we had no inflation. We had no 1.4%, considered none, considered better than none, because frankly, none in its own way is a bad thing also. We had a perfect number, 1.4%. It doesn't matter whether you're black or brown or white or whatever the hell color you are. It doesn't matter. We are all Americans, and we're going to pull together as Americans.
Guys, that's so powerful.
That's the closer.
The message. That's the message.
That in a nutshell, that is all he has to say. Break down the race lines, talk about what you were feeling financially. And I don't care, they can spout income increases across demographics. Your fatter paycheck gets a whole lot skinnier because of inflation and leaves you worse off now than you were before President Biden took office.
All right, we've got more audio from Trump at this rally, more analysis from us. He did tailor his message specifically to New Yorkers. He's a New Yorker after all. He talked about the crime problems there. He talked about how illegal immigration is affecting New York, as you know. And he also brought up a couple of rappers on stage and suggested that he wants to get a grill. But I don't know if he really... the Photoshops of that are going to be fantastic. So we'll get to all of that in just a moment. All right, listen, we've got a lot of audio from this rally, and I want to get to as much of it as I can. And honestly, it doesn't need a whole lot of analysis from us. Trump speaks for himself.
Yeah.
Now, who would let people, seriously, who would let people come from prisons and jails, from mental institutions? They cannot stay. We will immediately begin the largest criminal deportation operation in our country's history because this situation is sustainable by no country. No country can sustain this.
That's a message the left hates, and it's something that his voters and supporters love.
There's a 53% increase in felony assaults on your subways. 53%. That's in a short period of time. Since 2019, murders are up more than 20%. Shootings are up more than 30%. I'm going to indemnify all police officers and law enforcement officials throughout the United States to protect them from being destroyed by the radical left for taking strong actions on crime.
That's the opposite of defund the police, opposite
Exactly.
of rethinking law and order, and that's a winning message right now, Patrice, because it's gotten so bad. And then there's this.
When I take office, we are going to restore public safety and the rule of law in New York City. That starts with stopping the pouring into our country of millions and millions of illegal immigrants, which are causing a new category of violence called migrant crime. We have a migrant crime happening now. You add that to the crime already.
Yeah, and New Yorkers feel that. He finished, of course, with this.
It's working together. There is nothing we cannot do and no height we cannot achieve. Together we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. We will make America great again. Thank you, Bronx. Thank you, New York. We love you. Thank you. God bless everybody. God bless you. God bless.
Then, of course, the village people start. Well, I don't know. It doesn't get more New York
Man,
than
that got me all riled up. I'm ready to go. I don't know about you, Larry.
I forgot one of my most favorite moments last night. He brought up these two Bronx rappers. I don't know these people.
I think Rapper G is the name of one.
Chef G, yeah, Chef
G. Sorry.
And then and they had grills. You know, they had the fake teeth with the gold and the diamonds on their teeth.
And diamonds, yes.
One thing I want to say. One thing I want to say. They always gonna whisper your accomplishments and shout your failures. Trump gonna shout the wins for all of us. Make America great again.
By the way, a statement from the White House. Apparently, Joe Biden responded to these two rappers by saying they ain't black.
There you go. Can I just say they are iced out. They have these ginormous diamond encrusted medallions on their chest. It is, you can't get more hip hop rap than that.
Kathy Hochul, by the way, was on with Jake Tapper, and listen to what she said about her voters, her New Yorkers.
Well, I'll tell you, it won't make a difference at all, Jake, and that is for Donald Trump to be the ringleader of and invite all his clowns to a place like the Bronx. New York will never, ever support Donald Trump for president.
Wow, clowns. They're all clowns.
That's our Hillary Clinton deplorables basket comment. That's
I've saved this last clip as we're right up against it here, but I really thought it would resonate. This was, again, one of those men on the street moments. This is video man Vince Langman. He was grabbing this video for Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA and found a very lovely black woman who was walking, drinking a mocktail, she said, and just enjoying a nice warm day in the Bronx before the rally. And I want you to hear what she had to say.
His policies, I like how he says it like it is, and and Biden gotta go. I'm sick of him.
And what would you say to a black person that says that you're not black because you're voting for Trump?
Well, then I guess I identify as a white man. I don't know. I don't care what anybody has to say. I'm a mother. I care about the future of my child, and I care about policies over, rhetoric.
There it is. That's,
She speaks for herself and for many people.
That's right. And I think that as the organization is called Turning Point, I think we are maybe hitting a turning point. I know a lot of people were criticizing, saying, listen, Trump didn't have to be in New York. It didn't have a court date. He could have gone to a battleground state. I don't know. I think because of the media attention, this actually resonates elsewhere. And I think that if you're in Cleveland, if you're in Detroit, if you're in Madison, if you're in a town that looks a lot like and feels a lot like New York and the Bronx right now, given this attention, given the fact that, do you think Joe Biden would go to
No, he takes
Alabama
them for
or
granted.
Texas? Joe Biden's not even going to the Bronx, let alone going to a deep red
Exactly.
state
Yeah.
to try to get a support. And I don't know, I think that there's something, I think this is powerful. I really do.